now I've gotten it in my head to create a newsletter. Now, it'll mostly be curated content that I steal from other people, but in an attempt to not steal everything, I'd like to write at least one essay per newsletter, which will be around once a month, I'm thinking. And I haven't written much in the last few years since finishing my undergrad, right? I did a philosophy minor, but since then I haven't really written. So I dove in headfirst today and I wrote an essay, and I'm recording it for you here because I know that some people, they prefer not to read, they prefer to listen, and they need the talking head to focus, right? Okay, so here I am recording it for you. Now, this whole thing was, or at least the topic of this essay was spurred on by an article I was sent by my grad supervisor, so we'll get into that in a minute. So, I want to start with this idea of the Lindy effect. Now, this has become somewhat popular in the culture ever since Nassim Taleb published his book Anti-Fragile. Now, I haven't read that, but, you know, I suppose I'm a victim of the cultural diffusion from that because I've heard of the Lindy effect from many different people and places on the internet. So, the idea is basically that if something has existed for a long period of time, and it still exists currently, it's likely to continue to exist for a long period of time into the future. And while not explicitly in the theory, the thing that most people sort of connect to that is that if something's been around for a long period of time, then it's more likely to be true. And over time, things kind of converge upon truth, and untrue beliefs are kind of weeded out over time, right? So while not explicitly part of the Lindy effect per se, most people, when they discuss the Lindy effect, they're in effect saying that things that are older are more likely to be true. Now, in his essay, Kenneth, this is the essay I read from my grad supervisor that spurred the whole thing. In his essay, Kenneth Burke, the essay is called Literature as Equipment for Living. And the Lindy effect is kind of what underlies his whole theory. He doesn't use the term, but it's very, they accord very well with one another. Anyways, in his essay, Kenneth Burke is essentially arguing that literature ought to be seen as a attitude or a solution to a certain common situation that humans encounter. Now, he starts his argument by pointing out that language and even proverbs kind of naturally arise when a new situation comes into play. So by situation, he's referring to like a common human dilemma. So one example that he gives is, I'm going to butcher this, but he says something along the lines of, sweet turns sour when we pay. Something like that, right? And the idea is that, well, something might be worth obtaining if it's free. It's not worth obtaining if you have to pay for it, right? So a common situation in that regard would be being offered a good or service, and the response or the solution or attitude that is being suggested by the proverb is that, you maybe only ought to take it if it's free. So that's kind of an example of how a proverb may naturally arise in the culture that suggests a solution to a common human problem, right? So if you are maybe a bit more astute, you'll realize that this is maybe not true because sometimes proverbs are conflicting. So an example would be, do as I say, not as I do. And the contradictory proverb would be, well, imitation is the finest form of flattery. So which is it, right? And there's this Slovenian philosopher named Zizek, and he talks, his accent's terrible. He sounds like he has like the worst, I don't know, like lisp or cleft palate or something of all time. Anyways, it sounds like his mouth is like half full of water whenever he talks. Anyways, he has this whole thing where he's like, he dunks on wisdom. He thinks he's so cool. He's like, wisdom is stupid because people just rationalize their behavior or the outcome of a situation just by coming up with different proverbs, right? And the whole idea is that the proverbs are contradictory, right? Similar to how I've already pointed out. And it's just kind of ironic to me because he makes such a simple conflation between the proverb and the wisdom, right? Like the proverb itself is not the wisdom. The wisdom is the discernment to know when to apply the proverb and when not to apply it. And the proverb itself is just like a mnemonic, memory device to help us remember the different options we have. So yeah, anyways. So in Burke's view, contradictory proverbs aren't really an issue because it just means there's some confounding variable that would lead the wise person to choose one over the other, right? It's not that both of the proverbs that seem contradictory aren't equally valid ways of resolving the situation, right? So anyways, just kind of a tangent there. But Burke wants to take this this approach that he calls, well, he ends up calling sociological criticism. The idea that proverbs are like a solution to a common situation. He wants to take that and apply it to all of literature, okay? And so the example he gives of this is that of Madame Bovary, which is a 1857, I believe, story by the French author Gustave Flaubert. I'm sure I'm butchering that. My French accent is horrible. Anyways, if you don't know, Madame Bovary is a story about a girl named Emma. She is like a poor farmer. She marries this like, not aristocrat, but he's kind of like a middle, I don't know if they have like a middle class back then, but you know, that middle class guy. And she's just like super bored married. She's not satisfied with life, right? That's the common situation that the book is dealing with, life satisfaction. And so, which of course is a bit more diffuse than a purchasing decision, like the what is sweet often turns sour when we pay, right? That's more of like an acute situation, but life satisfaction is a bit more diffuse, but no matter, right? Burke's theory still applies. So anyways, this girl named Emma, she gets bored in her married life, so she has this like lustful, like this extravagant lifestyle to try to like fulfill the void in her heart, and she ends up just like destitute, begging for money, and then just dies. Yeah, spoiler alert. And then she obviously ruins her husband's life as well. He's heartbroken and all that. So, and I mean, the moralizing and the lesson here is obvious enough, right? I don't have to spell it out for you. Anyways, so in his example, Burke's pointing out that literature can suggest a particular attitude or solution to a common life problem, right? In this case, satisfaction with life. So I'm generally a fan of Burke's view, because I do think that literature should say something about the human condition and about the problems we face as humans. I don't think we should just like go off and like make like woo-woo art that like doesn't mean anything, and it's just like concentric circles or like some like abstract, like it's totally out in the boonies, right? No, art is like, it's meaningful and it's cogent and it's compelling because it says something about humans, about the way we live and about something core to our being, right? And so because of that, I do like Burke's view, because he's saying like, yeah, art should say something about humanity. But I do see two like common issues that could arise from this perspective. One of them is that it displaces the beautiful for the pragmatic, and the second is that if improperly applied, it could subvert sacred texts like the Bible, right? Which is not really necessarily an issue with the system itself, but more of an issue with people applying it. Anyways, but we'll talk about it. So the first issue I have with it, like I said, is subverting the beautiful for the pragmatic. So sometimes I'm not necessarily sure that all pieces of art need to be interpreted as saying something about like a common human problem, right? Some art is just beautiful for its own sake. I was trying to think of an example, like perhaps like a painting of nature or something like that, or just like a sculpture of a person standing, or like a haiku, like that talks about cherry blossoms or something like that. And perhaps Burke never meant for his theory to be applied beyond literature, but here I am bastardizing it, so make of that what you will. Anyways, sometimes I don't think art has to be a solution to something or say something about humanity. Sometimes it just is like beautiful in and of itself. And in that sense, the art is transcendent. It's not focused on humans. It's focused on maybe nature or God or something else, right? Some principle or form or idea. So I think it'd be a mistake to like apply Burke's sociological criticism to like every piece of art. Because sometimes I don't think that's the intent. Also, there are texts, and this is my second point about the Bible, is that there are some texts that claim historicity. They claim to be like historical and like nonfiction and accurate. And so I think it's kind of disingenuous to apply, I don't know, lots of different like critical methods, including sociological criticism, to a book that is intended to be like non-fictional, right? So like, I'd be okay applying Burke's view to maybe the book of Job, but not so much applying it to the Gospels, right? Because the Gospels, I mean, it's just like an account of what happened. I'm not trying to learn like what Matthew meant by like Jesus being born in a manger. Like there's not necessarily like a moral lesson in that. Like potentially you can find one, but I don't know, like I feel like you might be subverting the exactitude of a historical account by like trying to force it into a certain mode of interpretation. So anyways, those are my two potential gripes with the system. But anyways, I do like Burke's view, because at the end of the day, art should say something about humanity, and we have to account for the fact that some art is compelling and some art is not, right? And it's not just because some art is more beautiful than others. I mean, of course, the form matters, but the content also matters, right? Like, some art is more compelling because it says something about us as like at a core central level. And I think, yeah, oftentimes the deconstructivists and the postmoderns that say there is no human essence or there is no objective truth, they totally miss that, right? And they have no way of accounting for it. So, yeah, I do think this perspective is refreshing. And can you believe he wrote this essay in like 1938? I thought it was like in the 80s or like the 90s. But yeah, wow, this is he was a visionary for sure. So yeah, that's the essay. If you want a much more focused and what's the word? Expressive? That's not the right word. What's the word I'm thinking of when you are... This is why I write, right? Because in real-time video, I can't think. I have to like take time to actually put my thoughts clearly on paper. Anyways, if you want a much more clear, that's like a much simpler word, I guess, version of this video, go read the essay. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for your time. See you later.